Imagine being completely alone in the forest, at least you think you are, until the moment you realize something is watching you. And by then, it's already too late. That feeling of vulnerability, of being exposed in a place where you have no control, is one of our most primal fears. And yet, every day, people venture into these wild spaces thinking they're prepared for whatever nature throws at them. Today, I'm going to share 3 true stories that will forever change how you experience the wilderness. These accounts will not only send chills down your spine, but might just save your life one day. After researching hundreds of wilderness encounters and speaking with survivors who have experienced the unexplainable firsthand, I've discovered patterns that most outdoor safety guides never mention. We'll start with a hiker who discovered something horrifying in a remote cave, then move to a forest ranger whose routine patrol turned into a nightmare. And finally, I'll share the story that haunts me the most, a family camping trip that ended with a discovery so disturbing that authorities initially refused to make it public. But here's what most people get wrong about forest safety. The most dangerous threats aren't always the ones with claws and fangs. Sometimes, the real danger comes from something that shouldn't exist at all. Before we dive into these stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel because that's all we do here. So please hit that like button as if it were making strange noises in your tent at 3 a.m. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Our first story takes place in the Mount Baker-Snoqualmie National Forest in Washington State. In May of 2018, a 32-year-old experienced hiker named Marcus Elliott was on a solo backpacking trip, something he'd done dozens of times before. Marcus was no amateur. He'd been hiking since he was a teenager and had completed the entire Pacific Crest Trail just 2 years earlier. On the second day of his trip, Marcus ventured off the main trail to explore a small cave entrance he'd spotted from a ridge above. He'd later tell investigators that something about this cave just called to him, which was unusual since Marcus typically avoided caves due to claustrophobia. The entrance was narrow but opened into a larger chamber. Using his headlamp, Marcus noticed what appeared to be claw marks on the walls, not unusual in a bear's den. But what made him freeze was that these marks weren't random. They formed distinct patterns, almost like symbols. As Marcus moved deeper into the cave, his headlamp illuminated something on the ground that made his blood run cold. There, arranged in a perfect circle, were 7 backpacks, all appearing to belong to different hikers. Some looked relatively new, while others were weathered and torn. Marcus immediately backed away, planning to report his discovery to rangers. But as he turned to leave, his headlamp caught movement at the cave entrance. Something was blocking his exit, something large and dark that moved with deliberate purpose. What Marcus encountered next contradicts everything we understand about North American wildlife. But before I reveal what happened, let me ask you this. Have you ever had that feeling of being watched in the wilderness? That instinct that something isn't right? If so, tap that like button, because what Marcus experienced next validates that primal instinct we sometimes ignore. Marcus's fight-or-flight response kicked in immediately. With no escape route, he pressed himself against the cave wall and dimmed his headlamp. The figure at the entrance was massive, at least 7 feet tall, but didn't move like a bear. It stood upright, its silhouette unmistakably humanoid. For 3 excruciating hours, Marcus remained motionless as this entity moved around the cave, occasionally emitting low, guttural sounds that weren't quite animal but definitely weren't human. The creature seemed to be searching for something, methodically examining each backpack in the circle. Eventually, it left the cave, and Marcus waited another hour before making his escape. When he finally reached a ranger station the next day, he was dehydrated and exhausted but determined to report what he'd found. A search party was organized immediately, but when they reached the location Marcus described, there was no cave entrance to be found. The entire rock face appeared solid, with no sign that an opening had ever existed. Officials concluded that Marcus had become dehydrated and hallucinated the entire experience. But here's the disturbing part. Over the next 3 years, 7 hikers disappeared in that same section of forest. Each one was hiking solo, just like Marcus. Now, you might be thinking this was just a case of extreme dehydration causing hallucinations. That's certainly what authorities believed. But our second story makes me question that conclusion entirely. If Marcus's story resonated with you, tap that like button so more people can discover these crucial wilderness warnings. And if you're new here, subscribe to join our community of people seeking answers to the unexplainable. In October of 2015, Forest Ranger Caitlin Mercer was conducting a routine patrol in the Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina. With 15 years of experience, Caitlin knew these woods better than most people know their own neighborhoods. That afternoon, she received a radio call about possible illegal camping in a restricted area. The location was about 2 miles from the nearest trail, odd since most rule breakers typically stay closer to established paths. As Caitlin approached the coordinates, she noticed something strange. The forest had gone completely silent. No birds, no insects, just an eerie stillness that made the hair on her arms stand up. Any ranger will tell you that when the forest goes quiet, it means something is wrong. She soon discovered what appeared to be a campsite, but unlike any she'd seen before. There was no tent, no conventional campfire. Instead, she found a structure made of branches and foliage woven together in complex patterns. The structure was roughly dome-shaped, about 8 feet tall, with an opening just large enough for a person to crawl through. Inside, Caitlin found what appeared to be nests, 3 of them made from shredded clothing, backpack material, and pine needles. But what made her immediately radio for backup was what she found in the center, a pile of hiking boots. Dozens of them, ranging in size and style, some appearing decades old. As she documented the scene with her camera, Caitlin heard a sound that froze her in place, a rhythmic clicking noise coming from just beyond the tree line. Then another, answering from the opposite direction. Then a third. This is exactly what you see in the thumbnail. The moment Caitlin realized she wasn't alone in the forest, surrounded by something communicating in ways that defied explanation. Caitlin drew her service weapon and began backing toward the direction she'd come from. That's when she noticed them, 3 figures moving through the trees with incredible speed and agility. They were tall and thin, moving on all 4s but in a way that seemed unnatural, almost spider-like. Using every ounce of wilderness knowledge she possessed, Caitlin managed to evade these entities and make it back to her vehicle. When a tactical team returned to the site the next day, the structure was gone. Not dismantled, completely gone, as if it had never existed. The only evidence of Caitlin's experience was the photographs on her camera. Forest Service officials classified the incident as an encounter with unauthorized wilderness inhabitants, essentially squatters. But Caitlin resigned from her position a month later and has refused to enter any forest since. In her resignation letter, which later leaked online, she wrote, "What I saw doesn't exist in any wildlife manual. They weren't human and they weren't animal. They were something else entirely." But as unsettling as Caitlin's experience was, our third story reveals something even more disturbing, because it shows that sometimes the worst way to find out you're not alone in the forest is when whatever's out there decides to follow you home. In July of 2020, the Campbell family, parents James and Lisa, and their 2 children, Emma and Tyler, went camping in the Monongahela National Forest in West Virginia. They were experienced campers who made this same trip every summer. On their second night, around 2 a.m., they were awakened by what sounded like someone or something circling their tent. James grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside but saw nothing. The rest of the night passed without incident. The following day, while hiking, Tyler wandered slightly off trail and discovered what he described as a weird tree house built into the side of a massive oak. James investigated and found a crude structure with walls covered in strange symbols carved directly into the wood. Most disturbing was a collection of small animal bones arranged in precise geometric patterns on the floor. James took a few photos, feeling increasingly uneasy, and hurried his family back to their campsite. That night, they decided to cut their trip short and return home the next morning. Have you ever had that gut feeling that something just isn't right? That instinct that says, get out now, even when you can't explain why. That instinct exists for a reason, and for the Campbells, ignoring it would have catastrophic consequences. When they returned to their suburban home outside Pittsburgh, everything seemed normal at first. But 3 days later, Lisa noticed something disturbing. In their backyard, directly behind their tool shed, someone had arranged rocks in the exact same geometric pattern they'd seen in the forest structure. James installed security cameras that night. At 3:17 a.m., one camera captured a tall, emaciated figure moving across their yard with unnatural speed. It paused at their back door, placed something on the doorstep, and vanished into the darkness. In the morning, they found a small pouch made of leaves. Inside was their son Tyler's missing sock, one he'd lost during their camping trip. The police were called, but despite increasing patrols in the area, the strange occurrences continued. Symbols matching those from the forest structure began appearing on their property. Trail cameras captured glimpses of figures moving at the edge of their yard at night, figures that walked on all fours but could suddenly rise to heights exceeding 7 feet. This is the moment, the Campbell family realizing that whatever had been watching them in the forest had followed them home, bringing with it a terror that no locked door could keep out. After 2 weeks of escalating incidents, the family fled their home and moved across the country. They've never spoken publicly about their experience, but the case file remains open with local police, classified as stalking by unknown subject. What makes this case particularly disturbing is that forest rangers who later investigated the area where the Campbells had camped found no less than 7 similar structures within a 3-mile radius, all containing the same geometric bone arrangements. Now, I'm not telling you these stories to keep you out of the forest. The wilderness is magnificent and healing, and statistically, you're far more likely to be harmed in your own bathroom than on a hiking trail. But these accounts remind us of something crucial. We are never truly alone in nature, and sometimes the presence we feel watching us isn't just our imagination. So how do you protect yourself when venturing into the wilderness? I've developed a 3-part framework based on these cases and dozens of others I've researched. First, establish boundaries. Before setting up camp, walk the perimeter of your chosen area. Look for anything unusual, structures, markings, arranged objects, and if you find something that feels off, move elsewhere. Trust that instinct. Second, maintain awareness. The victims in all 3 of our stories noticed the forest going silent before their encounters. Nature communicates danger in subtle ways. Learn to listen. If the birds stop singing and the insects go quiet, something is wrong. Third, document everything. If you experience something unusual, photograph it immediately. The rangers who dismissed Marcus's cave story might have responded differently if he'd had photographic evidence. Your phone could be the difference between being believed and being dismissed. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something unexplainable in the wilderness? That feeling of being watched or finding something that shouldn't be there? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help others recognize warning signs they would otherwise ignore. And if you're planning a wilderness trip soon, screenshot this video at the 3-part framework section and save it to your phone. Knowledge is your best defense against the unexplainable. Remember, the strange, dark, and mysterious isn't just found in urban legends and campfire stories. Sometimes, it's waiting for you in the places we consider most natural and pure. Stay vigilant, stay prepared, and most importantly, stay strange. If you enjoyed this video, there's another story you need to hear about a park ranger who discovered something in a remote fire tower that changed everything we know about forest disappearances. That video is linked right here. Until next time, this is Mr. Ballin. Thank you for listening.